All right, so this is part three to our Hebrew study of Genesis chapter one. Now, if you haven't seen, there are two videos that I made, part one and part two, and obviously this will be part three. And so I recommend, if you haven't seen part one and part two, they're very good because they kind of flow right into part three. And in part one and two, I should say part two, we stopped or finished off at verse 5, and today we'll be starting at verse 6, which brings us to our very first two words, Vayomer Elohim. Now, Vayomer Elohim is a phrase that you're going to see over and over and over throughout Genesis chapter 1. But I want to highlight the very second word, the word Elohim. And I touched on this previously, I think in part one or part two. I'm just going to expound upon it a little bit more. And then I'm going to make another video dedicated entirely to the word Elohim. But this is very, very important because this is not seen in translation. And so the English reader is not aware of this. So I just kind of want to explain this before we even go any further. All right. So in most translations, you will find where it says God said, but most people are not aware that the word or God comes from the word Elohim, or the word God that is used there is translated from the word Elohim in most Bibles. Now, Elohim is a plural word in Hebrew because of the ending of the word, and the root word of Elohim, or in the singular form of Elohim, would be El, or Eloah. All right. Now, in biblical Hebrew, the reason why you don't find Gods in the translations, or some people refer to as the Godhead, which in this case is not correct, is because the verb here is singular. Okay, so and the verb is, excuse me, is viomer. The yod makes it masculine, singular, and it is should be understood in the third person. So essentially, it says the divine power or God or He said, and so now Elohim now comes from being plural to singular because how the verb is being used. And this is something that is done throughout Scripture, and so you have to pay attention to the context of the sentence, or even the adjectives or the pronouns, and you can apply that rule in most cases. Now, there are a few, if with anything, there are a few exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, if the verb is singular and the noun is plural, then it should be understood as being singular, or the adjectives. All right. So I just wanted to point that out because there's so much, and the reason why I'm pointing out again because I just saw something a couple of days ago with the discussion with somebody on YouTube, and it was just unbearable to listen to, of just the information that was put out there about Elohim. But in the context of verse 6, it only should be understood in a singular sense. It's God, He said, one person speaking. All right. And so the divine said, Ye Rakia Beto Kamayim. All right. Let me highlight that. I want to expound upon this word here, Rakia. Um, Now, Rakia is a very interesting word, and a very controversial word, just like this word here. I think in part two is Hayatah. This is very controversial, but also very important. This is another word. Rakia the root word of Rakia is the verb Rakah. And Rakah should be, the simplest way to be understood is something that is thin, flattened out, essentially. Um, um, you can say beaten out as well. Something that is layered out, essentially. Or it could be understood as something is solid as well, that is flattened out. Okay. Now, I want to point out something because I like to use a lot of illustrations, and I'm not saying this is what the rakia is, and because in most translations you'll find the word ferment, um, or expanse, and I think maybe expanse is probably a better translation of rakia. But that's another thing, tomato, tomato. But I want to point out something that I saw an article on, and this is from NASA.gov. And I'm just gonna read this. I'm not gonna go through the whole article, but I just want to show you something out that's very interesting. Um, to show you how divine the Torah is, the scripture, Genesis, Bereshit. It says NASA's Van Allen probe spot an impenetrable barrier in space. Two donuts of seething radiation that surrounds the Earth, called the Van Allen radiation belts, have found to contain a nearly impenetrable barrier that prevents the fastest and the most energetic electrons from reaching Earth. Now, here is a picture of it. Essentially, there's belts in the planisphere, and there's a protective barrier that surrounds our Earth. Okay, it's an interesting article, and there's so much information out there. Here's an animated version of it. And the reason why it's interesting and very controversial, to and I'm not a conspiracy guy, but I'm just gonna throw this out there. There's a lot of speculation on doubt as if to, did man really go to the moon? Because in order to accomplish that, they would have to have passed the Van Allen belt. Okay, and the Van Allen belt is just basically made up of radiation and very highly deadly radiation that if a human being is supposed to come in contact with it, is basically lethal. And so which brings a lot of doubt, and I'm not gonna go say if they did or they didn't, but I'm just pointing out the fact that there is a protective barrier, or you could say something that surrounds the earth, and it is to prevent different harmful things from the sun, different things to come to our planet. um all right, so I just wanted to point that out. So back to the scripture. And another thing people kind of attribute rakia to, is essentially that there's a glass ceiling essentially over the earth. I mean, again, do your research. Come to your own understanding. I know this is not something that you're gonna hear talked about a lot, but do your own research on it. That which will question a lot of different things that we've been told about a lot of different things. I'm not gonna say yay or nay, just saying do your research. But there is another side to many different things, and most people, everything that we learn is we from school essentially, and not everything in school that we learn is correct, and we have to always remember that. All right. So, and another thing, people attribute the Rakia to essentially the atmosphere. In the atmosphere, there are different layers. You have the stratosphere and etc., and it goes up and sub, etc. But just want to show you different possibilities of what this Rakia could be. All right, so it says, Vayomer Elohim, Yi Rakia Beto Kamayim, Vayi Mabdil Ben Mayim Lamayim, which is the Most High, the divine power, said, let there be a Rakia, the barrier, um, among or in the midst of the waters, and let it divide between the waters of the waters and of the waters. All right. So that is verse 6. Now, verse 7 starts off with this: Va'as Elohim. Now, verse 6 starts off with, which is God made, or the divine power made, he made, and verse 6, and he said. Okay, so it says, Va'as Elohim et harakia. So he said, God said, let there be a rakia. In verse 7, it says, and he made the rakia. We have the definite article, hey, here. Which brings us to another point that I think sometimes people overlook, just human nature, is that if I said, hey, I'm gonna make a house, right? Obviously, the house is not gonna appear like in 1 second, right? The reason why is because in order for that to happen, there are elements that goes along building a house. Like I have to lay the topography of the land. I have to drain correctly. I have to lay the foundation. I have to do the framing. I have to do the plumbing. I have to do the electrical. I have to do the concrete. I have to do, add the brick and the different things. And I mean, there's so much elements that comes to building a home, right? So it's the fact that I said it, now it's time to put it in action, which brings us to the point that when you speak, even me speaking now, there's a process of me thinking. I just don't speak without something beforehand. So when he said that he said, let there be a rakia, it doesn't necessarily mean that he said it verbally. It could have meant it just in his head, the thought, the process of planning the rakia. How is he going to form the rakia? Meaning that, um, uh, for example, like the Van Allen belt is made up of our radiation. So there are elements that are involved and that make up how this radiations and different things like that. So, so if I'm going to jog, it doesn't require much planning. I just start running. But when it comes to building different things, it requires more planning. But essentially, every spoken word or every action comes from a previous thought. So I just wanted to point that out. All right. So because you'll see that correlation over and over. God said, and then he made, which means that he planned, he thought, and then he accomplished what he said. All right. So the latter part, and let me highlight the latter part of that verse 7. So far we have Elohim, Vaya As Elohim Eharakia, which is the Most High made, or the divine power made. The Rakia U Yaved, Va Yavdil Ben Hamayim Ashri Metahot La Rakia, which is, and he divided between the waters which are under the rakia, this barrier, this expanse or firmament, whatever you want to call it. Next, Uben Chamayim Ashri Me'el La Rakia Vayi Ken, which between the waters which are above the rakia, and it came to be, and it was so. So this rakia or harakia divides the water. There's water below it and there's water above it. Now let me explain this very quickly, to show you another article that I saw. Now the Torah, the scriptures, to show you how ahead of time and how divine this book is. I want to show you another example of this. All right, about this, that science is just not catching up to uh, the Torah, Genesis. It says this. This is an article. New space theory, universe is liquid, claim scientists. I'm just going to read briefly. And again, do your own research on this. Everything I put forth, go do your own research. I'm just doing the Hebrew study in Genesis, but I'm just showing you these, I guess, secular stuff to show you that they're now just starting to figure out what the Torah has already said. It says the universe should be regarded as a liquid superfluid, claims scientists seeking to discover the fundamental natures of space. So there's the rakia separates the water that are above it and below it. So, and there's a lot more articles about this. There's a lot more scientists that are coming on board to realize that, hold on, it's really liquid in origin. Which would, and you're going to see in the subsequent verses, he calls the rakia eventually the heavens. So it's like, this is so profound. Like when every time I read it, understand that there's no way this could be an accident. And the reason why I say that is because no matter what your religious belief is, no matter what point of view you come from when it relates to the scriptures, no matter if you even don't believe in the Most High, everything comes back to this right here, Bereshit, the beginning. Everything, because everything had a beginning, and we live life now. Everything is normal, but everything had to become from the beginning. Everything had to have the first plant, had to have the first human, had to have the first this. There had to have been a point, a beginning point. Either it was done by a creator, as you're gonna see here in Bereshit, that everything is so detailed and balanced that it had to happen this way, all right? Or it's by an accident, which I don't believe, All right. All right. So next verse here, verse 8, Vayikra Elohim Larakia, which is the divine power he called the Larakia, which is the barrier, or the firmament expanse, whatever you want to call it, Shemayim. So he calls the Rakia Shemayim, heaven. Vayi Erev, let me highlight it. Vayi Erev, Vayi Boka Yom Shani, which is there was an evening and there was a morning, and this was the second day, or day two, essentially. Now, let me expound upon Yi, Vayi Erev, Vayi Boka Yom Shani, which is there was an evening and a morning, which represents balance. You'll find that phrase over and over again. You'll find there was a morning, there was an evening, it was this day. There was a morning, there was an evening, this day, balance. Everything in Bereshit is based on balance. Everything in life, essentially, at is the origin and perfection, is based off balance. Everything is done in balance and in order. And this is what the Most High is establishing from the very beginning. Everything has been done in order, and everything is also balanced. You cannot have morning and not have evening. You cannot work 24/7 and not have sleep. You there has to be a balance. You have fire, you have water. Is everything is a balance, and you're going to see that. And everything was perfectly made in balance as we go along. All right. So next we have verse 9, Vayomer Elohim, which is the divine power said, or God said, Yika'u Hamayim Metahut Shemayim El Makom Ahad. Just let me highlight there and then expound upon that. Um, collect or gather the waters under the heavens into one place, stand in place. Okay. So he said, the waters were together in one place, and he said, next part, Vetara'e hayabasha vayiken, and the let me break this down. The dry land, the land, let it appear, and it was so. All right. Now I want to spend time on this again. I'm gonna show you another article that I read on this to again show you that people are now they're starting to see the wisdom and the truth in these scriptures. And the reason why I say that too is because the first encounter that we have God doing is in verse 2, where it says, Veruach Elohim erehefet el pani hamayim, which is, and the spirit, or which is really the wind of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. So the very interaction that we have with the Most High is moving upon the waters. And he said, okay, now that because essentially there was only water at this point. He said, now I'm going to put the waters into one designated place, and now I'm going to allow the dry land now to come and appear. And it was so. Now look at this. This is an article that I read. I found very interesting. It said early Earth was conceived in a global ocean and had no mountains. Now, these numbers here, I don't really go along with these numbers, but then again, I'm not going to sit here and say the Earth is this age and that age. I'm not going to say that, but I don't believe the conventional number of it. But then again, it could be true. But I'm just showing you what the Torah says. It says, there's something else I wanted to point out. Uh, where is it? What is this? All right, so it says Earth 4.4 billion years ago was flat and almost entirely covered in water, with just a few small islands, new research suggests. Now, if we go back here, again, those numbers could be off, but essentially, there was just water, and then the dry land appeared, exactly what the Torah says, which is amazing. Okay, depending on how whatever numbers you want to use, you say how old the Earth is. I would never debate anybody on that. I'm just showing you that eventually everybody's gonna see that there's no other greater explanation or no other thing equivalent to the scriptures of what we're reading right now. Okay, so this is a divine book. All right, verse 10. Um, it says, "Vayikra Elohim layabasha eretz," and the Most High God called the dry land earth or land. Let me highlight that so we won't get confused. At least I won't get confused. All right, ul mekave hamayim kara yamim vare Elohim kitov. Okay, so so God called the dry land earth or land, and he said gather the water, and the waters that were gathered in one location he called the seas, or you can say the oceans. And the divine power saw that it was good, it was pleasing. All right, so he saw that it was good. After he thought of everything, he put the plan in action, and once it was implemented, he looked at it and he said it was tov, which in Hebrew is good. It was pleasing. All right, verse 11. Again, we have find that phrase again. Vayomer Elohim. And God said, he said, Tadse haaretz deshe, asev matzriya zera etz pari, oshe pari lemeno ashri zero vo el haaretz vayiken. All right, so let me break that down. Let me highlight this part, the latter part of it, the verse. All right. So he says, sorry, Vayomer Elohim, Tad se haaretz. God said, let the earth sprout forth grass, herb, matzriya zera, which is, let me just break this down. When it is in most translation, you will find the word seed or yielding seed. But basically, what seed is, or plant seed or any seed, is DNA. So essentially, God said, let's make DNA and RNA that seed is able to produce. And then you'll find peri, ose, peri, which is etz peri, ose, peri, which is fruit that be able to make fruit, which is DNA and RNA. Again, this is the when people understand there's billions of information in DNA. So this is sophistication and detail and information that God said, I'm gonna make the everlasting, perpetual process of repeating itself. So it's not, so when you see a plant or herb, and there's so much detail in that people miss after its kind. Okay, so that's basically verse 11. And he said, and again he said it was so. And so this is DNA and RNA, everything as we know it, every type of plant, every type of fruit, yielding fruit. He says, I'm going to make that process. So you can see the earth is self-sustaining, that everything was made for life, from the protective barrier around it to everything, that everything is done in order, and it shows you the perfection at its highest. So everything that the Most High made was perfect. All right. And so let me go to verse 12. Let me highlight verse 12. And I think I'll stop at where I'm going to stop. I go a couple more verses because I know this is probably at 20 minutes now or so. Start with this word here. Vatose haaretz. Okay, deshe eshev, which is and the earth brought forth grass, and herb. You see, in the previous verse, and he said that God said, "Let there be grass and herb." Now he put the process of the making everything. Now he made everything. He made a DNA, and now the earth is now doing what he basically said, "Here's the blueprint. Now you do it now." And so he implemented it now. Okay. So Vatoze haaret deshe oshev metsuria zera lemenu ve'etz ose padri ashri zero vo lemenu um vare Elohim kitov. All right. So again, so he said it previously, and now he made it everything that we know, every plant, every fruit, everything agriculture, this was done here. Okay. Next we have Vayi Erev, Vayi Boka Yom Shalishi. Again, and it came to be evening, and it came to be morning, Yom Shalishi, which is day 3. So this was done, everything was done up until day 3 that we have. So and the reason why is that because we know that eventually man was going to be made. So the divine intellect of the creator knew that these are the steps that would have to be taking place prior to. He just didn't make man and then everything after that. All these things were perfectly planned, self-sustaining for, and everything that we have now is the direct result of what happened in the better sheet. So everything from all our fruits, vegetables, everything so far, water, dry land, everything, morning, evening, all that's happened from the better sheet. And that being said, I'm going to pause right there. Toda Rabah, for everybody who is watching, I hope you have learned something and hopefully been edified. And we'll pick up, um, um, we'll go into the 4th and 5th day. And hopefully, I'll just probably make 2 more parts. I'm going to cover next part, I'll go to the 4th and 5th day, and then the last will end at verse 31 here. So we have a lot more to go through, and I'll see you next time. All right, shalom.